Hi again from the Ivory Tower Collections. So this video I'm going to try to keep it pretty short, but it's going to be hopefully very informative and useful for many people out there. So let's talk about the MT-200 again. So quick question, what would you do if the floppy drive in the MT-200 were to start were to malfunction for you? What would you do? Well, you could replace it. There are refurbs available on eBay and other online sources. But again, they're refurbished, so you don't really know what the quality of it's going to be or how long it might last. Well, what if there was another option? Well, there is. This is the GoTEK USB Floppy Emulator. Basically, like the name implies, it emulates a floppy drive using a USB flash drive. It does this by creating multiple partitions on the USB flash drive, where each partition essentially emulates or simulates an individual floppy diskette. And to the computer that the GoTEK is plugged into, or the device it's plugged into, it can't tell the difference. It just thinks that you're reading floppy disks. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about in this video, is the installation of one of these GoTEKs into my Roland MT-200. Now, before I get too far into this, I want to describe the main reason. I want to tell the main reason why I did this. One is that my floppy disks, while the drives themselves seem to be fairly reliable, my floppy disks are not, and I've been having more and more trouble with them giving me read errors and things of that sort when trying to copy files and read files from them. There was another problem as well, and that was the reason why I have this video being made. The problem was, you can buy drives just like this, pre-configured, ready to go on eBay, but they're rather expensive. At least at the time of this video, the pre-configured drives specifically listed as working with the MT-200 and the MT-90 and the 80 and the other models with the floppy drives like that, average about $100. And to me, that seemed kind of pricey for no more than what this thing is supposed to do. Let's talk about the GoTEK itself. There's not much to it. It's about the size of a 3.5-inch floppy drive. It does have the same 34-pin headers or pin connectors on the back, interface connector, as you would on a standard PC floppy drive, in addition to the 4-pin power cord or power cable connector. It's got a bank of jumpers here, which are very important. I'll talk about that later. And that's basically it. It mounts in the same bracket or in the same space that a standard 3.5-inch floppy drive would mount in. It just came like you see it, pretty much in a bubble wrap or bubble mailer, and with this little tiny baggie of mount screws. That's it. That's all I got. I didn't have any software. So that adds to two of the challenges that were facing me with this and that I needed to solve. The first was, what was the proper jumper configuration I needed? And the second was finding software that I needed to work with my thumb drive or flash drive in a computer so that I could copy the files to it I need to use with my Roland MT-200. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. Let's talk about the first part of the mystery I had to solve, and that was the jumper pin configuration right up here. Hopefully my camera will focus in on that. So yeah, I couldn't find any documentation about this, but I did find a website that listed the jumpers and what they meant. And utilizing that and basically just trial and error, I was able to figure out the jumpers I needed to enable for the GoTEK to actually work on my Roland. Now the cool thing about this is, a lot of websites will tell you that you have to basically reflash a GoTEK drive with some different firmware and software in it to really utilize it properly. And it seemed like a lot of trouble to me. So the good news is that at least with my Roland MT-200, I didn't have to do any of that. I just had to set the jumpers on the back the way that I figured out, and basically find software to use with the USB flash drive, and that was it. So you're going to need 4 jumpers for the Roland MT-200. The problem is my GoTEK only had 2 attached. So I had to find some more jumpers just, you know, in my scrap bin. Old hard drives are a great place. Old IDE hard drives with the slave master jumpers on them. That's basically where I snagged these 2 more. So if you can, when you pick up a GoTEK, see if you can find one that's got extra jumpers with it. I've seen them on eBay where they're advertised as you get the drive and you get the bag of screws like I got, and usually you get like 1 or 2 more jumpers with it. Mine didn't, so I had to find them. So let's talk about the way the jumpers are set up. And I'm going to zoom in on this to make it a little easier. Okay, so here's the jumpers. Now this is the top and this is the bottom down here. So I had to have 4 jumpers in specific places for this GoTEK to work in my Roland properly. And you can't see it in the shot that you're looking at right now, but I will put up a chart later on this. Probably overlay it off to the side over here or something while I'm talking about this. But these jumpers are labeled. And they are labeled from the top down. This is J5. Then you have, let me get something to point with. I got J5, JA as in alpha, JB, JC, JB, S0, S1, and M0 or M Oscar. I can't really tell on the PCB. Basically, I'm not sure what the J pin designations are specifically. I wish I did. But I can tell you that the last one, the MO, is basically motor on or motor detection. And that one was one of the jumpers I had to enable. It wasn't set at first. I don't know how yours will come out of the box when you receive it, what jumpers configuration you'll have. So that's why I'm going through this. So yes, I had to have the bottom one enabled for motor detection or motor on. The other one I have is the S0 jumper in place. And that's required because in my particular Roland sound module, and I would suspect others as well with floppy drives, it's a single ribbon cable floppy. So it doesn't have the twist in it. So this jumper needs to be enabled so that the Roland knows that it's drive 1, or basically it's the first drive in the series. I know S0 sounds kind of weird when there's an S0 and an S1, but that's just the way IBM stuff was back then, just like the very first hard drive was drive 0. So the very first floppy drive is S0. And then the other pin I had to have is the one right next to it, is the pin marked as JB, and that's Juliet Bravo. And then the last one I had to have up here towards the top is actually JA, as in Juliet Alpha. So those are the 4 pins I had to have. The motor on, or MO, S0, JB, and JA. A as in apple. So what tools are you going to need to perform the task of getting this GoTEK drive changed out? Well, once you have the jumpers configured properly on your GoTEK emulator, then you can go ahead and actually install it into your Roland MT-200. So what tools are we going to need? Well, some pretty usual stuff. You're going to need like a number 2 Phillips. You're going to need this in order to get into the module. I would recommend having some small needle nose pliers or small tweezers for picking up any screws that fall whenever you're taking this apart, and that will probably happen. You're also going to possibly need a small, like number 1 Phillips, or a small precision Phillips head or jeweler's screwdriver as well. Might come in handy. You're going to need to make sure you got your mounting screws. That's because the original floppy drive, as you'll see, uses standard machine screws on a bracket, and because the GoTEK is a plastic body housing, it comes with some different screws, basically like these larger threaded metal screws, or they're almost like self-tappers. So yeah, you gotta make sure you've got those. So let's crack open into this. The MT-200 is pretty easy to take apart if you know where all the screws are. So I'll just kind of show you. First of all, you have 3 screws along the bottom here, here, and here on the far left and right, and 1 in the center. You have to take those 3 out first to get the back panel off. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, with those 3 screws removed, the back panel, oh, I'm lying. There's a 4th screw. You also have to take the screw off here for the power adapter hold down. There we go. And then the back panel just comes right off. Now, there's only 6 more screws total that have to come off. There are 3 more screws along the back top here And then you also have 3 screws see if I can get that in camera, along the bottom front edge of the module as well. So I'm going to take those out now. Okay, all the screws have been removed. So you might think that by default you can just lift the cover right off, and yeah, you can't really do that. There's a lot of wires and connections inside of the module. You can sort of move it up from the front, but then you've got like about 6 different cable connections, harnesses that you have to disconnect off the main board. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know what Roland exactly used, but they are really stuck on there. I'll tell you, more than once trying to remove those connectors, it's felt like I was going to rip the wires right out. And since all we're trying to do with this today is just to replace the floppy drive assembly with the GoTEK, the good news is we don't really need to worry about disconnecting anything along the front. If you have all the other screws removed, then what you can do instead is lift it from the back, kind of like a hood. Now, you can kind of see up inside there's a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. So here's what you need to disconnect to make this a little easier. Disconnect the floppy drive read cable from the back of the floppy drive and the power connector. So I'm going to try that now. Now these aren't going to come out real easily. They are going to fight you a little bit. Okay, there's the floppy drive cable. Now to try to get that power cable out. There we go. Got it. Once you've removed those, you can essentially lift the unit up considerably more. And then, like I said, you can see there's a whole mess of cables and additional wires and connectors inside the unit. But all we're really concerned about, and I'm going to move this out of the way a little bit and see if I can try to get this in frame. May not be able to. I'll have to turn it around. That'll work. So keep in mind you're about to work from 180 degrees here. There we go. We're concerned with this portion right here, which is the floppy drive assembly. Now, technically all you need to do, since you've already removed the interface cable and the power cable from the back, is you could just take the 4 anchor screws off the bottom of it here, and then that would allow you to actually slide the floppy drive out of the module forward through the front of it. But it's also just as easy, I think, to just remove the main screws itself that anchor the floppy drive in place along the side. Mainly because they're a little bigger, a little easier to get to, and you don't have to worry about possibly scratching up the module on the front. There we go. To remove the drive assembly, because you can just pop it off like that. And there we go. There's the original floppy drive removed from the module. So at this point, you would just simply need to take the 4 anchor screws out here for the bracket and put the GoTEK drive in its place. Now the GoTEK should come with 4 little screws, plastic self-tappers essentially, to use, because again the GoTEK drive is made of plastic, so the original machine screws that are probably going to be on your floppy drive are not going to fit very well in the GoTEK. So yes, you'll definitely need to use these little plastic anchor screws. So that's really all you have to do once you get that in place. So I'm going to go ahead and switch that out and be right back. I now have the GoTEK drive installed in the original floppy drive's mounting bracket, and I'm going to go ahead and do the reverse of what I did to take everything out to put everything back in, with the exception of the GoTEK going back in place of where the floppy was. So I'm going to do that right now. So in the when we come back, I will show you basically the operation of how to use the GoTEK. It does require some software, like I said, for your computer. In this case, I'm going to only be focusing on Wintel architecture, or basically Intel, Windows stuff, because that's what I have, it's what I use. And also show you how the GoTEK itself works when it's installed. But to be honest, it basically works and will function exactly like the original floppy drive did, provided you have the software and everything in place for setting up the thumb drive properly. So see you then. Now that the GoTEK drive is installed in your Roland MT-200, it's time to get some software set up so that you can actually prepare a USB flash drive with the various floppy drive partitions that you need for the emulator to work, as well as how to get some files copied to those partitions. There are two programs I use primarily to do this. The first one is the FD USB W7 from Kaytron. Now, this is not software specifically designed for this model of the GoTEK. It is actually designed from another competing synthesizer company that happens to make their own GoTEK-like flash drives or flash emulators, and their software works very similar. I primarily just use one program from it, and it's the File Explorer, although it does also contain a file formatter which can also be used to create floppy images to the flash drive. But primarily I use its File Explorer to copy the files. The other one is the USB Floppy Emulator version 1.40i. This also contains a floppy drive formatting program as well as a File Explorer. However, the File Explorer on this particular software package does not seem to work in 64-bit operating systems, or at least it doesn't work on my Windows 10 system here, which is why I ultimately found the Kaytron software. So once you have these programs and you've installed them, let's take a look at them. And by the way, I will have download links, at least current download links for these two programs at the time of this video in the video descriptor, so that it'll be easier for you to find them. So let's talk about the Floppy Manager software first. Now I'm going to use this to actually prepare a flash drive for use. Now when you open up the batch management tool, it will automatically recognize whatever flash drive you might happen to have installed. Now when you try to double click it to open it, it's going to recognize that it has not yet been formatted and will automatically bring up the formatter window. Alternatively, you can go up here to the USB flash drive menu and choose the format option. So from this list, it will show you all of your flash drives that you have available. It will allow you to specify what kind of partitions you wish to create. But keep in mind that this particular GoTEK only supports 1.44 meg images. So while I might be able to format the flash drive with 1.2 megabyte or 720 kilobyte images, those will not be possible to read properly through this GoTEK that I have. You can also specify the number of partitions, or in this case, the number of floppy disks that you wish to create on the drive. This software does limit you to 100 partitions. And you do have the option to specify whether you want to quickly format it or not. So I will go ahead and begin the format process to create my floppy drive image partitions. I'll go ahead and confirm the error or the warning message here. And that's it. It's that quick. Drive is done. I will now exit this, and you will now see that we have these 99, well, from 0 to 99 floppy partitions that have been created. Now, if you're using this on a 32-bit operating system, such as Windows XP, and I've also heard it works on Windows 7 32-bit, then you can actually just double-click one of these partitions, and it will open up a Windows Explorer window that will allow you to copy files to and from just like anything else. However, again, since I'm using Windows 10 here, this doesn't actually work properly. Whenever I try to copy files and save them, it gives me a file read error every time. But for what I'm doing here to format and prepare the disks, it works great for this. Another handy option that this allows me to do is the use of what is called floppy images. Basically, think of them as already done images that contain files on floppy disk partitions. Now, the reason for using this is pretty cool. Although I have 99 or rather 100 floppy disk partition images here, these will not actually be readable in the Roland MT-200 as yet. The Roland MT-200 will recognize that a diskette more or less has been inserted, but it will tell you that it is of the improper type, requiring you to format this partition again through the Roland MT-200 in order to be able to actually copy files to it through the sequencer module itself. Now, this is fine, except that it can be rather tedious and it takes a long time. And with 100 partitions, I'm sure you can see it would take quite some time to go through all of them. Well, the good news is that I created one image partition of an already pre-formatted, ready-to-go image done through the Roland MT-200, and I can actually copy that to all of the remaining partitions in one shot. So let me show you how that works. I'm actually not going to worry about the first one, the 000, because you can actually copy files directly into these partitions without doing what I'm about to do with the Kaytron software if you're just going to copy MIDI files to them, and they will be readable in the Roland MT-200. However, for the other ones, I'm going to go ahead and show you how the imaging works. So because I want to do a whole bunch of these all at once, there's a way to actually just specify the first file, hold down the Shift key, and then push the arrow key down, and we'll highlight all the remaining 99 partitions. I will simply right-click on one of them and specify bulk write image file. And again, I already have an image file that I created previously, so I'm going to highlight it and open it. And it will now begin to re-image each of these partitions with this floppy drive image I created so that it's actually readable on the Roland MT-200. And you'll see that as it's writing, counting up, it's showing what's left, counting down. And that's it. Those are written to, ready to go. Now, in order for them to actually work, you also have to right-click and do a save. You don't have to do it on all of them. You just have to choose one like I did and choose the save option. And that's it. I've now created a blank floppy image to all of these 99 or 100 floppy drive partitions so that I can use it and work with it. So let's actually copy some files over. And for that, I need to use the Virtual Floppy Explorer. This is part of the Kaytron software package I spoke of at the beginning. So when I open this, just like before, I'll have to specify my flash drive, and it will automatically read and recognize those partitions that were created previously by the other program. Again, this also has a formatter with it, which you can use if you wish, but for simplicity, I just decided to use the formatter with the Floppy Manager. But again, I have to use the Floppy Explorer from the Kaytron guys in order to actually copy files. So once I've selected a flash drive, I see all my partitions. All I have to do is highlight by double-clicking one of the partitions here on the left-hand window. And in the right-hand window, it will show you whatever file contents you might have. Now, this particular partition, partition 0, is empty, so I have nothing here. Let's take care of that. All I have to do is choose the option Copy to Floppy. This will open up your Windows browser, and then you just simply have to navigate to wherever the MIDI files you want to copy are located. In this case, I've got all of these I want to copy, so I'm going to highlight all of them. Now, you do want to make sure that when you do this, that you know that the actual size of all of the files you're going to copy, especially if you're doing a bulk copy like I am, will physically fit. Again, these partitions can only hold 1.4 megs of data. So I've highlighted all the files. I'm going to click Open, and it will actually copy them to that blank floppy partition. And that's it. These files are there. They're already copied and ready to be used. And that's pretty much it. It's really quite simple. Again, I'll have links for these programs in the video descriptor. I will also have a link for the floppy drive image that I created to create the blank partitions automatically, so that will speed things up for you. And in the next segment of this video, I'm going to now take this flash drive, plug it into my Roland MT-200, and show you how it works. And we're back. I've got my MT-200 set up and ready to go here. Now that I've shown you how the software configuration is done to get your USB floppy drive or flash drive working, let me show you how it works with the GoTEK installed. So I've already got everything ready to go. I'm going to power on my MT-200, and you're going to see that my floppy indicator light came on briefly, and it kind of blinked there because it was looking for basically it's looking for a floppy drive, which I don't have one in place. We can see over here that the MT-200 says new song, just like normal, so it thinks everything's good to go. And then here's my floppy drive with some songs on it and all of my partitions already formatted and ready to go with the image that I originally used. So when I insert this, what's going to happen is, and I don't know if you can see it, I'm pretty sure you can, there's two little zeros, or we've got 3 zeros, and 2 of them, the first one, the ones and the tens digit, have little decimals lit up on them. And that basically means that the GoTEK is awaiting a floppy image to be inserted. So when I put this thumb drive in place, or this USB reader, you're going to see those two lights disappear. You might see some flashing activity on my indicator light here, and then over here where it says new song, it's actually going to display the first song it's waiting to play. So I'm going to insert this now. Okay, the two lights went away. The GoTEK starts to read the USB thumb drive, and it now has the first title of the song that I have in this particular partition ready to go. And if I had songs stored on another partition, then all I would have to do is push the first button over here to the right on the GoTEK, and it will change that first digit from a 0 to a 1. This would now be the next floppy disk in place. And it says new song because I don't actually have anything on this second partition. And go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however far up you need to go. Now, technically, the GoTEK can store up to 999 floppy virtual images. And that does work. It does work. But I did have some instability with, I wouldn't say data corruption, but basically just didn't have very reliable activity with the module being able to read the data properly when it was formatted that way. Additionally, the only way to format one of these drives to 999 virtual partitions is through the GoTEK itself. And if you need to do that, I won't do it here, but if you need to do that, you would do so by holding down both of your navigation buttons on the GoTEK as you power on your module. And what will happen is you'll briefly see like a firmware revision show up on the front of the GoTEK drive, and then if you keep it held down long enough, then you're going to see it start to scroll up some numbers very, very quickly. And that is the GoTEK formatting your current USB drive for 999 virtual floppy partitions. But even if you do that, they still cannot be read natively by the module. That's why we went through the software process, was to show you how to set it up with the floppy image that I created. You can, after formatting one of these, you can actually go and use the standard disk format like you would to prepare a new diskette through the MT-200, but it takes a while to do that. So I don't mess with that too much. But anyway, so let me power it back on. It'll read through, has the first module ready to go, and I can just hit play just like anything else, and we should hear some music. Just like that. So yeah, from then on, if you need to go up, like we said, the button on the right will go up one digit at a time. If you use the button on the left, it will actually go up to the tens placement, like that. And so really, I would just recommend, just formatting it for 900, or sorry, not 900, but for just 99 separate disk partitions. I mean, think about it. That's got to be still, what, several hundred or possibly 1,000 MIDI files. That's a lot. So, I mean, if you need more, just get another thumb drive. They're not that expensive. So there we go. So hopefully this has helped somebody, or helped some of you guys out if you're looking at installing one of these GoTEKs into an MT-200, and I would assume it's the same for the 120, but I can't promise that. So yeah, you can pick these up. I've seen them as cheap as about $14 plus some additional for shipping. Again, I picked mine up for basically right at $20 shipped from eBay. And the rest of it was just my trial and error and lots of hours playing around with it and trying to hunt down the software. So I'll see you guys still. I still have part 3 to do on the tutorial for this, but I wanted to get this knocked out of the way. So hopefully this helps you guys out, and thanks for watching.